Jerry and Charlie riding through the airwaves, bringing you the heat. Come on, pull your bands, now get up out your seat. They're bringing you all things Mets. They're bringing you all things Mets. They're bringing you all things Mets. Now you're listening to Shea Station.
Today is Monday, July 21st, the 226th episode of Shea Station. The second half of the 2025 Mets season is officially underway. All-Star festivities have come and gone. The Mets came back home. They did something they should have done many years ago, retiring David Wright's number 5 in the rafters, but they could not honor the day with a win. They lose a series to the Cincinnati Reds in pretty deflating fashion. I was in the seats for one of those games, and let me tell you, I was feeling deflated. They managed to salvage that last game, though. We're going to talk all about it. Lots of roster stuff to discuss as well. I'm one of your co-hosts, Jack, a.k.a. Jolly. Joining me on his lovely summer vacation is Jerry Blevins. Jerry, clean-shaven, wearing your Field of Dreams whiskey hat. How you doing?
I'm lovely, my friend. Happy to be here. What a ceremony for David. Well-deserved. I like the timing, I'll be honest. I like the waiting, allowing him to establish himself in the offseason before, it's a different world for a ball player once you're done playing because your focus has been so singular. For him to, establish his life, seeing him with his kids and coaching, different sports. He looks great, man. He looks happy. He seems that way. Pretty cool.
Yeah, I think starting with the ceremony is a good idea because it was really wonderful. Like, I bought the tickets for the game in December as soon as they got announced that it was going to be on that day. Because with Doc and Daryl, I was really happy that happened. With Keith, obviously that was a really good one. But it's a little bit different when you experience it for a player you watched like their entire career of. So when I saw that got announced, I was like, I think I have to be there because that's like a core pillar of my like baseball upbringing was watching David Wright play. You just knew that he was going to have a wonderful speech too, because he's such a well-spoken guy and he always has been. I thought it was really well done. Howie did a fantastic job as always. My fiance, who is not a huge Mets fan, but she enjoys going to games and stuff, didn't know who Howie Rose was. And she said, man, he has a really great voice. And I go, yeah, well, he's been doing radio for a long time. But the ceremony was awesome. Weird sun showers in the middle of it, which I thought was funny. But you're right. David looks great. The Mets faithful killed it with the rousing applause. They snuck in one loud boo for the Wilpons at their only mention, which I thought was a little funny. But it's really cool seeing the crowd roar for Mets ownership. Every time Steve and Alex are on the screen, you hear from the crowd how much they appreciate everything they've done for this franchise. And this is just another thing.
Yeah, man. And if you haven't seen SNY's documentary on David, it is wonderful. Joe Kraus, who I have the pleasure of working with, at SNY, does an amazing job. It's truly fantastic. Gives you a peek inside, a little bit of history. It's worth the watch. So I would definitely send Mets fans who are David Wright fans or young fans and get a sense of who he is because, these types of iconic one franchise only players don't come along, that it just doesn't happen. I think of guys like Freddie Freeman being in LA and splitting his career. I even think of, other guys that I played with that it just didn't happen. And the only two that I can think of for my era was David. And then on the other side of things for me, it was Joe Mauer with the Twins.
Yeah.
Like just as iconic, just as impactful for his franchise, just as elite of a player. Joel probably, he's a Hall of Famer in general, I think, being especially as a catcher. His health at the end of his career didn't prevent him from still being productive. But David, man, it was a pleasure to play with him. I thought the captaincy was, a little bit of overblown, they love a guy.
Yeah.
I didn't realize what it was until being a part of it. Seeing David the way he leads. A true leader of men. Like it's rare to have your best player also be your vocal leader, your leader by example at the same time. And David transcended that. What an honor to play with him those last, 4 years basically. I never saw him at his peak. I played in the American League pre this interleague
True.
thing, so I
Yep.
literally never saw him play. Um, but I know who he was, what he brought to the table. Um, the face of the franchise. He's the captain, man.
Yeah, I mean, you really nailed it on the head with it's rare to see a guy that is your best player also be like the guy you want representing your franchise in front of the media and stuff like that. By the way, you did face David Wright one time.
Yeah,
One
I know what it was. It was the opening day of 2014. I backdoored a cutter, and it cut way more than I thought, and he popped it. We still won though.
I remember that homer. I think yeah, you guys
I do
won.
too.
It was like 9-7 or something like that.
Yeah, we won.
But you mentioned the
We
guys.
also made the playoffs that year. I don't know
Yeah.
if you
Okay. Okay. All right, guy. Okay. We needed your magic the next year. That's what it was.
Yeah, trust me, I've heard about that
Yeah.
that home run on numerous occasions.
But speaking of your nationals, you mentioned like guys that it didn't happen for. It was why, even as an NL East fan, it was very nice to see Zimmerman get the World Series in 19. At the end of his career, a guy that spent his whole career with one team, and like I thought it was just touching because there's this one clip that was going around after the Mets had won the NLCS, and it's just David looking at the hat that had the World Series logo on it, and you could see the joy in his face. And that part of his speech where he said, "I wanted it just as bad as you guys," like that really rang home. Of like,
I mean I'm
Go
glad
ahead.
you mentioned that because
Yeah.
that was what I was gonna say. That sums up what his captaincy is, like
Mm-hmm.
what type of character he has. He wanted to win a World Series, not for like obviously for himself because you're self-motivated in that sense and you want to be a part of it, but he truly wanted to win it for a franchise that believed in him, for
Yep.
a fan base that pushed him, that allowed him to do that. Just just a wonderful, wonderful human being. But that summed it up for me. The almost apologetic that he didn't win the World
Yeah,
Series
which is
for.
crazy.
Yeah, but that's how he feels.
Mhm.
That's what drives him. I'm sure that'll be. It's not a regret because there's so much that's out of your own hands. But it's one of the things, the shortcomings for his career. Um, the same with like an Aaron Judge. If he doesn't win a Super Bowl, if he doesn't win a World Series for those Yankees, that's how they judge you.
Yeah.
And David wanted to do that for the Mets. And what he brought to the Mets was beyond a World Series for me. Just, in a tumultuous time for a franchise, he was, one of the steadying factors by far.
Yeah, and I mean, this is a
Without
guy.
without him, holy shit,
Yeah, I mean,
where would the
well,
Mets have
he
been?
changed the franchise as soon as he debuted. Which, by the way, 21 years ago today, David Wright made his debut. Um, but you think about, the guy could have left if it was the hunger was different for I want a World Series for me rather than for this team that I play for. Yeah, David Wright could have left and probably won something and contributed to, a team that was probably putting together a better roster at the time. But the fact that he stayed a Met his whole career and that now is becoming such a rarity these days, guys staying in one place their entire career. Like you mentioned Freddie Freeman before, I still think of him as like a Brave in my mind. It's like sometimes like that's so the hat I picture him wearing when he gets into the hall. It's a special thing. And, it makes you feel a certain way about guys like Pete Alonso who are homegrown and who knows how long they'll be here. Jeff McNeil, kind of similar story. Guys that have been here for 10 years and made their mark on the team. You want those to continue happening. You want numbers up in the rafter. And I don't really know who the next Met will be to get their number up there. It might be a little bit, but it was really nice to see David get his day. And you are right. It was nice to have him get some time away. There was a period in time where we didn't see him involved with the Mets, on a broadcast or even at a game for years. And I think that was good for both sides. And it's happy to see him back in the fray.
It, being recently retired, especially for a guy that was out front, he did it. Him and Molly, they're really like just good people to begin with. He kind of had a vision for what they wanted their post baseball life to be, and they're doing that. And gosh, I love it so much for him to be able to hang with his kids because it's so easy for a guy that dedicated his life to baseball to like fall into the broadcasting.
Yep.
I look at Tom Brady. I wish Tom Brady would take a step
I
back, to be
agree.
honest.
Yeah, I almost have too much
You know,
Tom Brady.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
and I love Tom Brady, but take a step back, big guy. Let yourself have a life outside of the sport. You know, I don't know, and so I'm super happy for David because he seems genuinely happy, just as happy as when he was playing, if not more so. Just being, a family man, and I truly love that for him.
definitely better for the back too. I think.
Oh my
He
goodness,
played
yeah.
until he literally couldn't anymore. So yeah, that was really wonderful. The Mets play on the weekend. We'll get into that a little bit, but it was just nice to see that finally come together because it's something that I think Mets fans were expecting for a while, and the crowd was able to get in there early. Traffic was unbelievable that day. I left my house at 12 and got there at 2:15. But not an empty seat in the crowd, which is becoming. I don't want to take it for granted, but it is becoming more and more commonplace. Every time I go to Citi Field, there is not an empty
Never
seat.
take it for granted.
Never take it for granted.
Never, because this is it is it's part of the beauty of what's going on right now with this organization.
Yep.
I was worried, especially I think it was 21 when the playoffs with DeGrom and Scherzer. Is that right?
That was 22.
22.
Yeah.
The ballpark during it was like silent.
The month
And
of Escobar.
there was no buzz.
That walk-off, there's no one in the upper deck. There's no one
There's
in the
no
second
buzz.
deck. Yeah.
And so whatever has happened transformation wise in the organization to now, it feels more like organic, I think. Like the team build, the coaching staff, the ownership, it feels like they're starting to catch their stride. And I love so much that the fan base feels it too. And so it's a part of the magic that's happening. Um, I'll never take it for granted.
And I was reflecting on it because, they were showing David Wright highlights on the scoreboard. And a lot of those, those early 2010 Citi Field highlights, there's plenty of empty seats. And it makes sense when you see some of the rosters that were put together in David's prime. It's what if he played now, It would be something I think about a lot. But
They could
I don't
use
think
it
he
right
thinks
now.
about it too much. I think he's happy with his retirement. All right. Enough of that. I'm getting tearing up over here,
Okay.
Can't even
Let's
believe
move
it.
on to the current 25 Mets.
Yes, the current 2025 Mets who are starting to get a cleaner bill of health. Their play has been inconsistent. 11-20 in their last 31 games. Most of that is that 10-game skid against division rivals. But it feels like this team still is kind of stuck in the mud, not really getting consistent footing here. They were able to split their road trip against Baltimore and Kansas City before the All-Star break. We didn't chat too much about that. Biggest thing there, Sean Manaea and Kodai Senga made their returns. Both of them looked really good, especially Sean Manaea, who struck out 5 in a row in his season return. We get 2 Sean Manaea starts to talk about in this episode, which is great because we missed him dearly. And the biggest thing here, he's looking good. It looks like he's still going to be a strikeout pitcher. Doesn't seem to be showing any signs of that injury that was plaguing him in the first half. What were your thoughts on the Sean Manaea return to the bump?
Yeah, you nailed it. He looks healthy. There was a question even before he went down for injury in spring training. Is he the guy that he was in that second half
Right.
after the transformation mechanically? Because he was good before that.
Right.
That's a decent baseline. He was solid, but he took, a couple of climbs on that ladder as far as dominance goes. Ran out of gas in the playoffs, understandably, but there's still a question mark there on who he is. To me, he looks just as good as he did in his dominant form. I would love to see some length come in, and hopefully he maintains health. But he looked fantastic. He checked all the boxes for me.
Yeah, it didn't exceed 70 pitches, I believe, in either of those starts, but I think that's to be expected. The Mets are going to really ease him in. You saw that in the rehab that I think was 5 weeks long of them just taking their time, making sure he's 100%. And he looks it so far, so that's a really encouraging sign. 2 outings of 4 innings. He gave up a run in the start against the Reds, which was just a homer, but 13 strikeouts in 7 innings is the thing that'll raise your eyebrow a little bit and say, okay, this guy might be back. And you mentioned ran out of gas in last year's playoffs. If the playoffs are in the Mets' cards this year, they're going to have a Sean Manaea that's basically pitching to the first half of the season rather than, the career high for innings he's ever had. Kodai Senga also returning Kansas City, had a very Kodai Senga outing where he got to really toy with the young hitters with his ghost fork. Had traffic pretty much all the way through, but traffic never scores when Kodai Senga is on the bump. So he dealt 4 shutout innings, 6 strikeouts there. Season ERA down to 1.39. He's going to get the ball tonight against the Angels. That's pretty much it for the road trip. Mets had a nice comeback that almost resulted in a sweep in Kansas City, but it wasn't meant to be. Frankie Montas had another nice start. Never goes more than 5 innings, so it's kind of tough to hang your hat on it. Let's focus on this home series against the Reds. The Mets are running into a lot of teams that are playing good baseball right now. Their records might not show it, but the Reds had won 5 of 6 entering the series. They have the Angels next, who just took a series on the road against Philadelphia. So they're going to have to be playing some good baseball and better baseball than they played in the first 2 games of this series, especially. Game 1, I wanted to get your thoughts a little bit on the bullpen usage. Sean Manaea, as I mentioned before, 4 innings, 1 earned run. He looks really solid here. And then the Mets, with a fully rested bullpen outside of Edwin Diaz, who did pitch in the All-Star game, did go to their B guys, the guys at the back end, most notably Alex Carrillo, who allowed 5 runs on 3 homers. Were you surprised at all that he was the first guy out of the pen in this game, or did you think it was always going to be kind of a, 5 guys out of the pen to pick up Manaea once he was done?
Yeah, I think that's to me, that's the difficult part of stretching a guy out in the big leagues is you have a gap.
Yeah.
Like your A guys are set in stone at the 6, 7, 8, 9th inning. But when you're in the 5th, like what are you going to do you
Right.
have to figure out something, and they're looking for answers. We're going to touch base upon it later in the episode, but their bullpen is in shambles.
Yeah, a
And
little bit.
there's been signs pointing to it for the entire season. But outside of Diaz, who had just an atrocious debut in the second half, hopefully that's water under the bridge.
Yeah, really.
But outside of him, and I still believe in Reed Garrett, and I still think that Ryan Stanek is this guy. You're going to get dominance. You're going to get just giving up homers left and right. Outside of basically Garrett and Diaz, Bratzoban's a wild card like Stanek. You need some solid guys. Brooks Raley coming back, I think, is huge. But again, he come back from Tommy John.
Yeah.
So you can't force him into 3 out of 4 games early in the jump. So they need a couple of arms out of that bullpen.
And it's especially tough because Mets just got news that Max Kranick and Dedniel Nunez are both going to be having Tommy John surgery. It's really tough. I think it's both the second of their careers, which is really discouraging, especially after these guys were shown, really flashes of really good pitching at the major league level. It looked like Nunez had that outing against the Braves, I believe, where he struck out 3, and it felt like, oh my God, this is the guy we saw in 2024 that kept us afloat for a month. And then with Kranick, he had so many big outings in April and May to really save this team, picking up 2 innings. Those are the 2 guys that would probably get the spots over Carrillo and Brendan Waddell, who got most of the pitching in game 1, which pretty much resulted in the loss there. And it's just the nature of the David Stearns bullpen of a lot of guys with options and a lot of guys that are, kind of throwing more than they ever have, throwing harder than they ever have, reaching their maximum potential. You're left susceptible to injury risks like this. And you mentioned names before. The Mets really have 2 guys that they can trust right now, and Edwin Diaz and Reed Garrett, both of whom haven't looked incredibly sharp as of very late. It's going to be a pressing need, as is for every competitive team, that the Mets go out there and get some bullpen. It just makes me think to last year, though, because by this time last year, the Mets had gone out and gotten Phil Maton, who I know didn't have a great postseason, but for a month or 2 there became a guy that they relied on heavily in late leverage innings. I would love a move like that right now just to kind of give this bullpen a breath of air and, maybe a little bit of a jolt. It doesn't even need to be that big blockbuster move because, as we know, with every trade deadline now, with 12 playoff spots, prices are always going to be high. But I think bullpen is a very pressing need for this team right now.
Yeah, it's league-wide, the need for a bullpen, but the Mets need 2 guys, and they need a Phil Maton, and then they need a guy above Phil Maton.
Yeah.
They need to go out and get, they need to like a Rice Iglesias, like a David Bednar. They need a solid, eighth inning guy or a closer on a different team to come in and take a step down
Yeah.
and be reliable. And they need a guy to fill in where Alex Carrillo was in. They need, having Max Kranick and Dedyo Nunez. My heart goes out to those guys. That's
Yeah.
heartbreaking. Having gone through rehab with my broken arm, it's mentally draining. The physicality, the work ethic that it takes to get back, that'll be the easy part. The hard part is going through it again. Um, but they need to solidify at least two arms, something reliable for Carlos Mendoza to know
Mm.
that if you bring those guys, that's the difference between the beginning of the season and now is when you're down 4-1 in the fourth inning, you can bring in a guy that's going to keep it 4-1, allow your offense to chip away, and then you win it in the back end. That's the difference in this ball club right now is they don't have those a 4-1 deficit early becomes 8-1 because your lower rung arms in that bullpen can't throw up zeros on a regular basis to allow the offense to come back. So it isn't the wins in the beginning of the season felt inevitable because Brazzoban,
Yep.
because of Kranick, because of those guys coming in. It just doesn't exist right now, and that's their biggest weakness is the bottom half of the bullpen isn't up to par right now.
And I think we were wise enough to know that, like, hey, Griffin Canning and Clay Holmes, they're giving you 5 every time. It's 5 good innings. You can live that way early in the season when you have that fully healthy bullpen. And on top of that, those guys are pitching some of the best baseball of their career, like Kranick,
Correct.
like Brazzoban. But you're right. It's a little bit different when, Sean Manaea is going to give you 4, and then a guy who's never really had a major league cup of coffee is coming in with good stuff. But when you throw 98 down the middle, major league hitters, they're going to hit it. It's not going to blow them away. So tough for Carrillo there. Waddell ended up mopping up the game, but the Mets would lose this first game 8-4. So we saw one need come through in game 1, and then we kind of saw the other need come through in game 2, which is the Mets continue to have these really brutal performances with runners in scoring position. This game was so this was the game I was at, and it felt like it was a long game. First of all, probably one of the longer games I've been to in the pitch clock era. Clay Holmes, not a great outing for him. 5 1/3, 4 runs. That 6th inning continues to be elusive for him. He hasn't finished 6th since June 7th, so
Wow.
6 weeks ago. 5.04 ERA since June 19th. The Mets were in this game thanks to a couple of good bullpen performances, including Brooks Raley, as you mentioned before. We'll see how much he gets used, but he looked really sharp. I'm sure the Mets will be very protective of him as he comes back from Tommy John surgery. That's a nice reverse of what's been going on lately.
Love
Mets-
you. Bye. Sorry.
Oh, who's saying bye?
It was Asher.
Oh, bye,
coming in.
Asher. No on-camera appearance this
No,
time?
not today.
Damn. The Mets led this game 2-0. The bigger story there with the offense, though, 1 for 10 with runners in scoring position, 11 men left on base in total. Bases loaded, 1 out in the first inning. Bases loaded, 1 out in the 6th inning. 2 on with nobody out in the 9th inning. So many rallies, especially, a lot of them coming from the bottom of the order, too, where the guys at the top were unable to get it done. We, of course, had the Juan Soto at bat in the 9th inning, missed a game-tying home run by 3 feet.
If
Everyone in my section was on their feet. We all got fooled pretty bad. Then there was the weird pitch clock violation that didn't come to fruition. Trevino, I guess, got the timeout in time, and then the check swing, which a lot of people were up in arms about. It was kind of just an offensive performance where everything that could go wrong did go wrong for this team. They were unable to get the big hit. And that kind of leads me to ask you, do you envision, because I personally don't, but do you envision the Mets going out there and acquiring a bat of some kind? Last year, it was Jesse Winker. Winker has this ailing back injury. Mark Vientos continues to struggle. But do you think the Mets just stick with their internal options of Mauricio and Beatty and those guys and trust that one of them clicks in these final 2 months, or do they go out there and make a move?
I would be surprised if they make a move offensively. I would. The 2 places that they could go get are third base, which you have to let those young guys figure it out.
Yeah.
And then center field, where Tyrone Taylor continues to play excellent defense. And he's all right enough offensively. You're not relying on those guys. The true bane of the existence offensively, you touched upon it, is runners in scoring position. I have no answer for why it's happening because these guys have done so in their career. So you expect some of those numbers to kind of even out. But it's an issue, and I don't know what the answer is, but I don't think it's going and getting a new bat.
I don't really think so either. And if the Mets were to do it, it would probably be a DH caliber bat, and then that creates kind of a lineup logjam with. Go ahead.
That's the only other position because of Marte's knee, because he reestablished himself.
Yeah, they're feeling that loss a little bit. Yeah,
big time because he was a key piece, but it was a singles doubles hitter.
Yeah.
And then Jesse Winker has been non-existent all year. Even when he was swinging, he hadn't found his groove yet. I don't know how patient you can be at DH. If they do make a move, it would be for DH. But I don't know what's out there. I imagine that they try to figure it out internally. But yeah, man, DH, they need that's been a weird one for them.
Yeah, I mean you have Josh Naylor out there, but then the Diamondbacks just swept a series, so they're 50-50. They feel like they might still be in this thing, and why shouldn't they? They're an incredibly talented team. And then you have Marcell Ozuna, which, I don't know if the Mets are going to make a trade with the Braves. That just doesn't feel like something that'll happen. And Ozzy Albies, same situation there. Ryan O'Hearn was an all-star this year. He's having a really terrific year. But again, the price tag is going to be seismic for him.
And he's a platoon guy.
He's a platoon guy, and, he can give you corner outfield and stuff like that, but he's not going to play first because Pete's playing first, and he's really not going to play corner outfield because Soto and Nimmo are in those spots. So,
Correct.
Again, you're paying a hefty price tag for a guy that you're probably only going to DH and probably only DH him against righties. It does not feel like a move that David Stearns would make. Last year, it was a little bit different because the Mets had a very clear need. They needed a lefty power bat to bat fifth, and Jesse Winker was there for the taking. It didn't cost much of anything. I think it was like their number 25 prospect. The situation is just very different this year, and I think they would much rather see Mauricio hit left-handed and get more opportunities there. Brett Beatty had another good offensive series. Like, it just feels like the Mets are going to continue to look internally. And maybe it's going to be some guys that haven't made their debut yet. Drew Gilbert continues to hit at AAA. Maybe he gets a shot. But yeah, I think if the Mets are going to make a move, it's probably going to be bullpen. And we'll talk a little bit about the options available there because they are more so. And I think it'll cost the Mets a little bit less. But this game really hurt, man. I agree. I'm glad you brought up Starling Marte because, you mentioned it's singles and doubles, but a single or a double in any of those opportunities with the middle of the order up would have been potentially the difference in the game. And it's
a higher quality at bat.
Yes.
It's a big league at bat. He's battling. He's putting pressure on it. A lot of these at bats are non-competitive, and it's just flipping the lineup over and getting them out of a big inning. Just easy outs. And Marte has been anything but an easy out. So.
Yeah. A lot of 0-2 counts in this one. The Reds bullpen walked a incredibly tight rope to give up basically no runs in the back half of this game. It was a tough watch. I felt bad for my mom and dad who I dragged to Citi Field to watch this game. But at least we got the ceremony. But yeah, so that was game 2. Game 3, I mean, the team didn't look that sharp either. It felt like a sweep was certainly in the cards. Luckily, the stopper of all stoppers was on the bump, and that's David Peterson, who continues to just have a marvelous season. 6 innings, no earned runs. He did allow 1 run in the first inning on an error by Luis Angel Acuna. Just the 1 walk and 4 strikeouts. Got 2 double plays, living up to his nickname DP. And I love this stat from Will Salmon. He tweeted out right after the game because I always think about length of start whenever David Peterson's on the mound because when he's pitching for the Mets, it feels like, okay, bullpen might only have to go 3 today. 6 or more innings has been completed by a Mets starting pitcher just 5 times in their last 35 games, and David Peterson has been the man on the mound for all 5 of those games. So the Mets are not getting 6 innings, basically, unless one of their starting pitchers is on the mound specifically, which is just not a way to live. Manaea will get there eventually. You hope that Kodai Senga gets back to that eventually. You don't really have confidence in that with Frankie Montas or Clay Holmes. It just exacerbates the need for bullpen even more so for this Mets team. They were able to get it done in Game 3, though. Luis Angel Acuna collects his first RBI since May 9th with his double in the 6th inning to redeem his error. But this, you mentioned before, Edwin Diaz, his first real ugly outing. I can't remember when the last time he looked like that. I mean, I know he had a blown save in LA, but I don't think it looked this bad. Complete loss of control, a couple walks and a hit by pitch that allowed the Reds to tie the game, but the Mets were able to salvage this one. Ryan Stanek got the save in one of his biggest outings of the year. There are some positives to take away from Game 3, but again, this was just a game that made me feel mostly nervous watching it the whole time and just frustrated in general.
That it was really good to see Luis Angel Acuna look controlled at the plate and show his spark plug that he was early in the season. I think that was a key takeaway for me there. And then David Peterson, for sure. David Peterson is the ace of the staff right now as far as complete player. They're just in a tough spot because offensively, it's the same as it is in the rotation. You just got to wait for these guys to figure it out, to lengthen, whatever the case may be. Clay Holmes is in a unique spot for himself as far as innings pitched, pitches. So they're figuring it out on the fly there, but you got to let that kind of play itself out. Montas coming off injury and having mediocre success the last few years. He looks really good. I like what I see from him, but you can't expect him to go 6+ every time or want him to do that just yet. You'll feel it out. And maybe he earns those stripes and he's able to take the ball deeper into games. But Manaea is building up too. So these questions aren't just throw them out there. These are they're not ready to be out there yet. So it's the bullpen. The answer there is the bullpen. Give me 5 competitive innings and then the bullpen take over and let your offense to earn their way back. So you're just at a weird spot offensively and in the rotation. And
I mean, you look at the rotation on paper that's finally healthy of Peterson, Senga, Manaea, Holmes, Montas, and I feel really confident about that. Those top 3 in a playoff series, I think it is one of the best of any playoff team that's going to be in the cards this year. Peterson, Senga, Manaea, especially with a couple of those guys proving that they can hang last year. I mean, I know we used Peterson in kind of that swingman role. I think you'd be crazy to not give him a start this year in the playoffs. But yeah, it's just, you don't want to rush things along. And I do fully believe that in the second half, the Mets can get to full strength and, rip off, a lot of wins like they did in August and September last year. You got to remember, that's where the Mets did most of their winning, was in August and September.
That's how you want it anyway. You want to build that momentum leading into the playoffs. I could see Montas having that role that Peterson had last year because he's got electric stuff. He's got a highlight fastball. He's got that splitter. He's got swing and miss stuff. And if you need 2-3 innings out of the bullpen to gap to those guys at the back end, I think a starter with the stuff like Montas can make that transition. And he's a good teammate. Yeah. So he wouldn't be, he's already getting paid too. So that would help, that would help answer those questions for him because he knows going into next season that it doesn't matter that the team didn't trust him to be a starter. But that's the troubles in July that lead into August is you just got to figure it out yourselves.
Yeah. And here's what I'll say on the pitching front of things. I think within reason, we can expect the Mets to make at least one move for a leverage bullpen arm. I'm assuming Stearns is going to look for someone with team control of some kind or a guy that's maybe a little bit under the radar that maybe doesn't have that huge price tag. I will say, so the Mets are going to get Jose Butto back sometime soon. He just made another rehab outing at Syracuse. He might even get recalled today, for all we know. He's due back. So there's one weapon you re-add. I truly do think that the Mets would be wise to give one of Brandon Sproat or Nolan McLean a look in this next month because both of them have been pitching incredible at AAA. Sproat especially coinciding with Alvarez's demotion ever since he's been thrown to him. And I just think that if you get into a situation where this rotation that's finally healthy, endures another bump in the road of some kind with injury, those are the guys you really want taking the ball in important August and September games. No slack on Hagenman and Waddell, who I think for their roles have done a good job. I think
Agreed.
they came into the season not knowing if they'd ever put on the Major League uniform, and they've been called upon and done a nice enough job. And throw Blade Tidwell in there too. But I think it is unfair to make those guys take the ball in Philadelphia and Atlanta and, San Diego late in the season in games that you feel like you need to win, especially with the wild card race being as close as it is. So
I don't hate that idea.
I don't think it's a bad idea because
electricity coming
Right.
out of the bullpen or getting a spot start here and there because there's built-in upside right there.
yeah. And think about it in the vein of as my lights go off one more time. People watching on YouTube love the singing. There we go. Think about it in the vein of, okay, we're in September and the Mets decide not to do that. They're going to protect their young guys and Kodai Senga gets hurt. Instead of, Brandon Sproat getting his foot dipped in the water in late July, he's now getting thrown into the fire in September. Because I assume that's a move the Mets would think about making. I just think it makes a lot of sense for these guys to start to get their first looks, especially after proving that they can handle themselves for a 2-month stretch at AAA with more competitive opponents. I think it's just something to think about. I think the Mets would be wise to consider at least just one of them. I know McLean is a lot younger and he's two-way, so there's a lot of things working there. But Sproat is a guy that this organization is pretty excited for. And we saw him in spring training, and it was really fun to watch him pitch. And the highlights going around on SNY Mets Twitter account is always something I take some time to watch as well. I think that if you're a Mets fan, don't be surprised if one of those guys gets a look in the coming weeks, especially if the Mets, I don't want to say drag their feet, but take their time on making a bullpen move, hopefully waiting for the right deal to come around.
I agree. There's a lot of teams, the Dodgers, there's a lot of elite teams looking for bullpen help. You have to get creative because it's going to be expensive, prospect wise. You know, you have Cade Smith and Clase over in Cleveland, and they don't want relief from money. They want prospects
Yeah,
that
they
they
want
can
guys.
control,
Yeah.
guys that haven't made their debut that have high end potential to get. It's going to take a guy like Sproat going to another team most likely to get an elite arm like that. So, yeah, it'll be interesting. And again, you trust in a guy to make those decisions in this front office that they've shown proper risk reward, proper player evaluation to make trades like that. So it'll be a fun, eventful one way, eventful or uneventful because of asking prices, but you got to believe in who you have making those decisions.
And how excited were we last year? And I know this was out of necessity with Francisco Lindor, but when Acuna got the call and he came up and he instantly hit a homer and, was playing solid defense. I mean, how exciting was that for Mets fans to see, one, a homegrown guy get their shot and thrive in the middle of a playoff race, but two, the first ripple effect of the, Stearns front office get a shot at the major league level. Like, people are excited about Drew Gilbert because he came from that 2023 sell-off. People are excited about Nolan McLean because that's a fully developed Stearns draft pick who has found his footing at the minor league level, And the Mets are in this rare position for a team looking to contend at the trade deadline where they have 1, 2, 3, 4 of their top 10 prospects are at AAA. Like knocking on the door. Those are the Death Star moves you can potentially make. I don't think the Mets will do that, but I'm sure it's something in the back of their mind of if there is a big fish out there and we have the capital to match that other teams simply can't, it's something that you definitely think about.
There's one more name lower on the list. He's in Double-A. His name's Jonah Tong.
Oh, yeah.
I am not a prospect guy. I don't know the farm system, but I do know guys that know the farm system. And this has been a name brought up regularly for a full year. Started in spring training. I was like, who's that? Watching him throw. And Joe DeMeo of SNY is like, get to know the name. He'll be a guy somewhere. He'll make an impact in this organization, whether it's himself having success or as a trade piece. He's having an absolutely dominant year down there.
Yeah.
91 strikeouts to 19 walks. He's throwing strikes, dominant. He's only got 54 innings in those 91 strikeouts. Just a beautiful, beautiful run. They have options. They will figure it out. I expect them to move the right levers and pull the right strings. Um, but that's another name that I want Mets fans to put on their watch list.
Yeah, and I would even go as far to say that he's untouchable at the deadline. Not that I think the Mets are going to make a move that would require a top 2 prospect, but he's been such a fast riser. And like the MLB main account has been posting highlights of this kid. Like the Mets
I haven't seen that.
some very special things going on in the minor leagues right now.
He's right on that age. He's 22 years old right now.
Yeah.
He just turned 22 in June, I believe. He's ready to make an impact. That's the kind of move. He's at Double A. I imagine he'll go up to Triple A at some point, but
maybe when a Triple A pitcher gets called up, who knows?
Yeah, he might be that guy. But just another name for people to think about.
Yeah, and all this is to say that, one, the Mets need to make some moves at the trade deadline, but two, this team, I feel very clearly needs some kind of spark right now. They just recalled Francisco Alvarez, which I think is a good start because for those who haven't been paying attention since he got sent down, Alvarez looks like Alvarez again at the AAA level. He went, let's see here, 20 for 67 with 11 home runs in about 20 games, which
wild
is superseded my expectations for what I thought he was going to do down there. He looks right again. He looks confident. We'll see. But at the same time, I don't want to fall into the same situation of, okay, we need Alvarez to be the guy. Like the whole thing that we went through a month ago was like, he needs to reset. We all need to recognize that he's 22, 23 years old and he's still a kid. I don't want him called up, immediately put in the 5-hole and expected to produce behind Alonso and Soto. I don't think that's good for either side. I will say, I think the Mets lineup will become a lot better with Alvarez back in the fold.
Torrens has been excellent.
Torrens is, I think, one of the best, arms behind the plate in baseball, and he calls a fantastic game. But yeah,
and it's been kind of reverse as far as ERA goes with Torrens too. I think some of the lack of success offensively carried over a little bit for Alvarez, but again, his ceiling is the best in the game from a catcher standpoint.
Yeah.
So who knows? I know a lot of people are down on Alvarez, and I get it. I understand the negativity because it's been hard to watch. But you see what he did, like those numbers in AAA. Immediately he went down there. I think he just needed a breath of fresh air, just a little bit of breathing room, out of the spotlight, and hopefully he comes back and he can be the player at least that we saw hit 25 home runs, but he can go even higher than that.
And I think it was what David Stern said in the press conference when Alvarez first went down, but he said it's much easier to make these adjustments and regain confidence when you're not doing it in front of 40,000 people every night. And they're chanting your name and booing you as loud as they can. I think that has a very real effect on Alvarez's potential of play. I don't know. I'm not going to suggest that there's any connotation, but we saw the best season of Francisco Alvarez's career when the Mets punted the 2023 season with 3 months to go. He played the best baseball that he's played at a major league level when there wasn't a ferocious home crowd every game. Maybe that's added pressure. Maybe it's not. I don't know. But what I do know is that the Mets are going to be a lot better to have their 23-year-old top prospect catcher back in the lineup on a day-to-day basis. And Luis Torrens, he's about as good as it gets when it comes to backup catching. One of the best defensive catchers. Gave us a nice 12-pitch walk, and I think the second game there, one of his better at-bats of the season. I think the Mets get a lot better with Alvarez back in the fold.
Agreed.
Let's do a little bit of trade deadline talk.
Cool.
As we begin to wrap up today's show a little bit. So we talked about legit power bat. I mentioned some of the candidates there. I don't think we'll spend too much time on it because I think most Mets fans would agree between Marte having a role, Vientos is not going anywhere. I don't think he's getting traded. There is not room for another player that I think can't play the field. And most of the bats that are going to be considered the elite echelon of guys available outside of Eugenio Suarez, who I don't think the Mets are going to go get, are guys that either play a corner outfield or first base position that is occupied, or guys that don't play a position, which the Mets can't afford to have on their roster, I don't think. So I would rule that out if you're a Mets fan. I'm sorry if you're listening and you're disappointed by that. I don't think the Mets go out there and get a guy that's going to end the season with like 25 homers. I think the offense that you see on the roster right now is the offense you get, and hopefully a change in philosophy or the recalling of Francisco Alvarez or maybe the promotion of another prospect. Hopefully that can provide a spark for the offense. But as we saw during their best baseball of the season, the Mets were winning games with pitching. They had the best staff ERA through the first 6 or 7 weeks of the year. The injuries have caught up to them. The length of the starters have caught up to them. I think that is going to be what the Mets primarily target. I do think that there's a world where they trade for a starting pitcher, just if they want to continue to run the 6-man rotation with Kodai Senga. But I think bullpen is the most likely. They've seen large jumps in ERA with Ryan Stanek, who had a 6.23 mark in June. Reed Garrett had a 7.36. Brazaban had a 13.50 in June. They need help getting the bridge to Edwin Diaz formalized. I wrote down some options here. Some others have been floating around that I think are a little less realistic. But Raisel Iglesias was a name we mentioned. He's someone who's not having a great year, but has had many, many good seasons in baseball before. Cal Finnegan continues to do it for the Nationals. It feels like every year he locks up 30 saves. Shelby Miller on the Diamondbacks, having a nice bounce-back season. Recently nursing an injury. Also, the Diamondbacks might not sell. Who the hell knows? The one I like the most, and I think the Pirates would be extremely wise to trade him because they didn't do this the first time around when he had a breakout year, is David Bednar, who had another awful start to the season after a really bad last year, but has really returned to form. His numbers are now at a 2.45 ERA in 33 innings, a 1.09 whip, a 12.3 K per nine, and he's got that extra year of control, which I know David Stearns likes when he goes out and acquires guys. That's someone I have my eye on. Was there anyone I didn't name or someone on the list I did name that you got your eye on?
Yeah, I mentioned it earlier in Clase and Cade Smith with the Guardians. But to me, the obvious choice is a Bednar type, a guy with team control. But for me, my number one option would be a Clase.
Yeah, obviously.
I know he's a closer, and it would be tough for him to come in and be behind Edwin Diaz. But I want that level of security out of the bullpen. I don't know what it would take. I like Raisel Iglesias. I like what he brings to the table. I think he would slot great into an eighth inning role. I love the juxtaposition of a changeup guy than Diaz. I think that stuff plays back to back really well, and it can match up really well. Even Bednar with his fastball curveball split kind of thing. But I love, if Shelby Miller's, if the Diamondbacks sell, I could see an option where you go from a Miller and a Merrill Kelly or a Zach Gallen to like solidify that rotation and get an elite arm. His career resurgence, I admire. He's got that really good fastball split combination too. Swing and miss type stuff, and I love it. Bednar, Miller, Clase, those are the kinds of guys that I think that they need, and they need more than one of them.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. The Mets
They
need
need
to.
the top tier,
Yeah.
and then they need a tier right here. And I'm not sure how much they're willing to part with to get those guys, but they need at least two arms. And then with Buteau coming back, I think that solidifies, depending on what role he plays. I could see him becoming that gap guy again, that like fifth, sixth inning guy to get to the back end.
Yeah, you got to remember that before his injury, Jose Buteau was on a really, really nice stretch
He
here.
was.
Since May 30th, so from May 31st to June 28th, so a month of baseball, 15 and a third innings, no earned runs, 6 walks to 14 strikeouts. Like he became the guy again, the guy that we fell in love with last year. So he's definitely a legit option that the Mets can trust in the back end, that I think he'll get more opportunities back there. One thing I want to say with Clase is that I know some Mets fans have it in their mind that it might be a money thing for him. His contract is awesome. It doesn't matter what market team you are.
Awesome for the team.
It's amazing for it's a $10 million team option each of the next 2 years. Like you'd be insane to not give Emmanuel Clase a $10 million deal when you can go out there and probably get 20 or more on the market right now. He is, I think, the dream, and especially, he fits that
He's only
control.
27 years old too.
And I think that not only is the Clase Diaz combo, would that be the best combination in baseball? It might be like the best combination like Mets history. Like I can't think of a better 8th, 9th duo in the history of this team.
Addison Reed, Jerry Blevins is.
I mean,
good.
that holds a soft spot in my heart, and you know that. I do the hat tip every time I walk off the mound. Come on. So that, I mean, I think that's the upper echelon of the moves the Mets could make there. Yohan Duran is the guy you dream about. Who knows what the
Duran
Twins will
and
do?
Griffin Jacks.
There's
out
just
of
so many
Minnesota.
teams in the middle. There's so
Yeah.
many teams in the middle, and I don't know what they do.
The Twins aren't doing. They can't. I don't. They're gonna fall apart. Shout out to Trevor. I know he struggles with it,
Yeah.
but they don't have it. I don't think.
But they're so
And
tied up in their players too that can they really sell? I don't know.
they can sell Duran and Griffin Jacks because the price tag is going to be elite because there's so many top teams that need that guy.
Yeah.
I'm glad that we figured out Duran and Jacks because that's a Class A Cade Smith combination too, an 8-9 kind of eliteness.
Yeah.
We saw, I think we hit Griffin Jacks okay when they were in town.
Yeah, but he's nasty.
He's filthy.
Yeah.
And again, they're going to need multiple arms.
Yeah, I mean, Twins bullpen is so good, man. Louis Varland has 181 in 40 innings. Like they have something figured out back there. The Twins. So I think they should sell, and they'd be one of the better equipped teams to sell, especially with bullpen. But I'm not confident in that idea.
Yeah.
I did like your idea of a starter reliever combo. The Diamondbacks, again, they're such a weird team because it feels like they're getting hot again. Maybe they don't sell. I don't know. And like Merrill Kelly and Zach Gallen, those are both rentals. They're not having the best seasons, but they are guys that are going to be very coveted at the trade deadline. Inversely from what I said about the bullpen, I do think the Mets wouldn't have any problem acquiring a rental starter, a guy that's just going to hit free agency at the end of the year, because I think everyone in this rotation is due back next season. So they don't have to worry about filling any spots. Whereas the bullpen, that's just something you think about on a year-to-year basis. If you can get a guy locked up for another year, that's a move you try and tackle there. So
Yeah. I
Felix
think of a team
Bautista, that's
like
another
the
name that's getting
Cardinals.
floated around right now too.
Felix Bautista,
Yeah, on the Orioles,
yeah.
who's nasty.
But I could see the Mets going for like a Sonny Gray,
Sure.
Phil Maton back in St. Louis because he's having a solid resurgence of his year. He looks good back there. Just to go get and then add a high-end bullpen arm with that, or an Eric Fetty,
Yeah.
fifth starter type guy. Yeah, it'd be pretty interesting.
But St. Louis is 51 and 49. So maybe
I
maybe
know, I
they're
know.
still in it too. It's hard to predict who gets moved, and we're 10 days away from the trade deadline. And it's not going to get any clearer until we're like 3 days away, maybe even sooner. And the teams that are surefire sellers, they're losing teams for a reason. They don't have a lot of lucrative options.
Yeah.
So it's going to be very interesting to see how the Mets navigate this. I do want to touch on center field because I do think it is worth mentioning. I know we're a pro Tyrone Taylor pod here. We like
Yes.
Tyrone Taylor. That being said, the bat has been gone for a while. It's been a tough watch. He's hitting 104 with a 287 OPS since June 22nd. And like you said before, the Mets are not relying on Tyrone Taylor to be an offensive powerhouse. But when we talk about runners in scoring position woes, when we talk about the bottom end of the lineup kind of falling out on a day-to-day basis, I think it is something the Mets will think about. Center field's pretty thin. We haven't heard much on Jose Siri's front either about when he's due back and what spot would he take if he does come back. That's hard to say. I outlined 3 guys. I have Cedric Mullins on the Orioles, who's kind of just been a reliable bat for a while. Luis Robert got pulled from the game a couple days ago for the White Sox, and everyone thought he was about to get moved. He's a tough nut to crack. I don't know what is the deal with Luis Robert, if he's still that player that he was a few years ago. And then Ramon Laureano on the Baltimore Orioles, who's not going to play a great defensive center field, but has been hitting the ball really well for them and is most likely to get moved. If the Mets bring in one of those 3 guys, do you think it moves the needle at all for this team?
I don't. I don't at all. I think I don't like what Luis Robert Jr. brings to the table. I don't like his demeanor on the field, I don't think it fits into the Mets team philosophy. Cedric Mullins is a solid choice, a good left-handed power bat, but he's not very good defensively anymore. I think the trade-off would be not worth it. And then Laureano is an absolute wild card. We've seen firsthand
Yeah.
the kind of defensive woes. He's also he can pop a ball. He's a strong man. But the unreliability defensively isn't a good trade-off for me.
Yeah. I do think Mullins of the three is the most realistic option. He's plus 2 outs above average in center field. Tyrone Taylor far exceeds that. Tyrone Taylor plays a fantastic center field defense. And when I think about, David Stearns with the Brewers, I think that's something he prioritizes over any offense. It's just a matter of, in these next 10 days, can someone show you something between Vientos and, Beatty's been hitting the ball well, but can Acuna keep it up? Can Mauricio continue to have good at-bats? I think that will affect the decision in some way. But I think we're both in agreement. It's probably going to be bullpen, and you hope that it's 1 to 2 arms.
Yeah, I'm hoping 2 to 3, I'll be honest.
Yeah, it'd be nice to
really
have a
am.
lot of weapons back there.
Yes, I think they need to at the minimum. Getting Rayleigh back again, they're missing, AJ Minter
Bad.
really badly.
So bad.
But the only glaring need that will be addressed is the bullpen in some manner. They're going to get, whether it's go get one guy and bring up a Sproat, a Jonah Tong to be that guy, whether they go get, I think they need at least one high-end back arm, and then they can fill it some way, and then maybe a fifth starter. But I don't think they do anything offensively. I think those runners in scoring position numbers start to level out. I think somebody establishes themselves, or they don't, and the team's not good enough, and Stearns isn't willing to give up, that high-end talent yet.
Yeah, I mean, I do think you're going to see a lot of these prospects come up next year. I sincerely hope that some of them get to an opportunity this year. I think that was incredibly helpful I know Acuna hasn't played well, but I think he would play a lot worse if he didn't get that cup of coffee last year. And, you might see that with Drew Gilbert. Maybe you see it with Jet Williams. I don't know. But the Mets need to do something to rekindle this offense a little bit. Obviously, when Lindor goes, the team goes. He's in a little bit of a slump. Soto and Alonso have been great. But again, they only bat one time through the order. 9 guys got a bat. So hopefully the Mets can piece something together there. One thing I did want to touch on before we wrap up the show. Did you see who the Phillies signed yesterday?
No. Oh, David Robertson.
David Robertson is off the board. He finally signed. I was shocked. I didn't think he was going to pitch this year. I'm upset that he's in Philly though, because
he's not. He wants a redemption.
Yeah,
he had a rough go in Philly.
Yeah,
and I wish he would have been back with the Mets. I'll be honest.
Yes.
But yeah, I'm happy for that. He's one of the easiest guys in the league to root for, so I'm happy to see him back.
And you just know that he's going to be good. Like I think he's in a cool position where he's pitched 16 years, and he probably doesn't want to do spring training anymore. He probably wants to spend more time with his family. But last 2 months of the season, you guys need someone. You got some money you can pay me? I'll come down and pitch. That's pretty cool. Doesn't have to get traded.
The Mets have their schedule coming up. It's pretty wild.
Yeah.
You mentioned the Angels on a streak, and then they go out west to face the very good Giants, who are still in the mix.
Mm-hmm.
Then they go Padres, and they get the Giants, Cleveland, Milwaukee, Atlanta,
on
Seattle.
A freaking heater. We're the only team that could beat them, apparently. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I'm glad you brought that up. It's a lot of teams that are fighting to stay alive right now. Like the Giants have been sputtering, but they're still very much in it. The Angels have climbed over 500. They're very much in it. The Padres are only one spot below us in the rung of the wild card chase. Like all these teams are just as hungry to win baseball games as we are. Not a lot of sellers in the upcoming schedule, so the Mets are going to have to play some good ball.
yes, sir. It'll be fun.
It's going to be fun.
As always.
I think that's all we got, though. I think we did a pretty good job covering the deadline. Hopefully, one of the names we said ends up in the blue and orange. That'd be nice.
That would be nice. Like a Camilo Duvall if the Giants fall off. Who
Oh,
knows?
if they sell, that'd be crazy, though. Trade for Rafael Devers, and a month later you sell. That'd be nuts.
Bring back Lucchese.
Oh, I'm down. Bring back the Churve, baby. Is he on the Major League Club? Is he pitching?
He
for him?
is. He is. He's
Hell
been
yeah.
up and down a little bit, but he's
Ooh.
up now.
12 innings, 1.0 whip. 13 strikeouts. Come on down, Joey.
Come on down, Joey.
I'd love to have you. He was great.
I'm for those post-game interviews. They're the best.
I'm a dog, man. I'm just a dog. All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed it, leave a like on the YouTube and subscribe to our channel. We really appreciate it. Check out Field of Dreams Whiskey down below. Got a shout out really quick. Frank Jackson, father of Taylor Jackson, who is basically the backbone of John Boy Media. I got to hang out with him when I was down in Savannah. We got dinner with the fam, and we sipped some nice Field of Dreams whiskey at the end of the night on the rocks.
Tell him thank you. Tell Taylor hello from me too, please.
Absolutely will. And he'll be listening. I trust that he'll be listening, so he'll know. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you're listening on a podcast app, leave us a rating, leave us a review. All that stuff really helps. Spotify, Google, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts.
Comments, questions.
Comments, all that stuff. You know, text Jerry's phone number. I'll drop it in the description down below. Call his house at night, all that good stuff. I haven't
changed my number since 2007, so it might be time.
You might have to change it tomorrow. We appreciate you guys so much. We'll see you guys soon. Let's go Mets.
Jerry and Charlie, Shea Station. Jerry and Charlie, thank you all for coming. Hope you enjoyed the show. We will see you next time, where we'll be back.
Shea Station.